Since I'm posting again so soon, I bet you can all tell that idea didn't work. It wasn't an entirely wasted trip, but I just don't want to think of the possibility of another year of nothing. First, I'll address some questions and comments left on the previous post. Then I'll get on with telling you what happened today. I just got back to the hotel and want to get everything written down before I forget any of the details. Right, so comments. You'd think by now I'd be in the habit of making plans, and not just running off into supernatural things that want to kill me. Well, you'd be kind of right. The plan was to find a way into Onolith and hope that I could stay unnoticed till I found my mom. Then the plan was to hope that opening portals works about the same way there that it does here, and that I could successfully drag myself through from that side back to Earth, since this is my native dimension. Obviously, lots of missing steps and hope that's in the plan. Maybe it's a good thing I didn't get to go try that this morning. As for taking Serene, we've considered the idea. It's just that, as a telepathic entity, I'm not sure how well she would handle being in a place like that. She can sort of tune out people, but she says it's a lot like how humans talk and hear others. It can be hard to ignore everyone in a crowded room. Even being around one or two demons is challenging for her, so I really don't know about a whole world of them. That said, she doesn't want me to go by myself, and we're still arguing about it. Even earlier today we were going back and forth. Now, on to today's events. A lot happened, so this might end up being a bit long. And if I could stop being so frustrated and have a bit of patience, maybe this will turn out better than if I'd gotten through today. It turns out there was, and is, a lot I didn't know. Well, yeah, Nemo, your plan a few paragraphs ago has more holes than Swiss cheese. So I went out and planned this morning. Serene came with me for this part. I had taken backpacking gear and more than a week's worth of food, so I was ready to wander around the woods till I found something. Luckily, my idea of walking in the direction of increasing weirdness and foul smelliness was right, so it didn't take that long. I did pay closer attention to the flora and fauna as I walked. I figured that the strange things I was seeing had slipped through from other dimensions, and hoped that at least some of them would be from Monolith, so I could get some idea of what to expect on the other side. It took a few hours of walking to get back to the part of the woods with the glowing mushrooms and strangely suicidal caterpillars. Many of the plants and animals at this stage were normal, and the strange ones were just slightly off. Everything seemed recognizable at least. We were just finishing up our lunch, and I was trying to figure out which direction smelled worse when Serene noticed something watching us. She confirmed it was the same entity as from yesterday, and that it didn't seem like a demon. That said, it didn't seem very friendly. We kept walking, in the hopes that it would just decide to leave us alone. Honestly, sometimes I question my decision-making process. Walking farther into the woods was a little like descending into madness, as things slowly stopped making sense. It was so gradual it's hard to pinpoint exactly when we crossed the line from, I don't think deer normally had that many legs, to, yeah, I don't even know what the fuck. I saw not only plants that glowed or had teeth, but also trees that got up and walked. I think sometimes they moved on purpose just to confuse us. I stopped being able to recognize the animals around us. Some of them were beautiful. A school, a flock, some type of luminescent being floated past us, and I swear I heard faint music coming from them. Maybe they were singing. The key detail was that it stopped feeling like Earth. Serene and I were definitely approaching a weak point between dimensions. The ground beneath our feet was getting less and less like a forest, and was starting to look a bit like sand, even though we were still in the middle of the woods. I couldn't see it, but according to Serene, the sand was most visible in the UV spectrum. To me, it just looked dull brown. Upon closer inspection, it was definitely not earth sand. if only because of the smell. I think the color reminded Serene of Yodis, because she stopped showing herself to me for a bit. Unfortunately for us, that entity that was stalking us, it never stopped. It chose that moment to dart out from where it was behind a tree. It was huge, maybe 7 to 8 feet tall if I had to guess, and made of pure muscle. Like, really, its skin was so thin you could probably have used it for an anatomy lesson on muscle groups. It must have had better eyesight than me, because it ignored me entirely and charged Serene instead, knocking her down and landing on top of her. I could see a mostly person-shaped imprint where she was pushed into the sand. Shit! I hadn't come into the forest completely unprepared, and brought a 5-inch knife. That was gonna have to do. Whatever the thing was, it still hadn't even looked at me, and had instead been growling something in a language I couldn't understand at Serene. I took advantage of that and approached behind it as quietly as I could, knife drawn. Serene had stopped moving, and was just lying there. I could only see the imprint she made in the sand, so I couldn't tell what was wrong. I lunged at the thing's back and was about to see how deep I could slice when "No!" exploded in my mind. There was no time to do anything else. I managed to move the knife mostly out of the way and collided with the two of them. I ended up making a very small cut on the creature's back, which oozed a black fluid. Well, now I had its attention. I scrambled backward and just stood there with the knife, waiting for something to happen. Then it also stood, looked at me, looked at Serene, then looked back at me, and took a step away from us. Now she tells me she wants to talk to it, and that it seems lost and didn't really mean us harm. I think she forgot I couldn't see her, and didn't think about how I'd interpret the situation earlier. I decided to let her take the lead on this one, and also took a step back before putting away the knife. Turns out the creature was from another closely opposed dimension, and ended up here due to the weakening of barriers between its world and ours. Earlier it had been following us because it was lost, and we seemed to know where we were going. Serene said it also had some ability to perceive her thoughts, and that when she started thinking of Yodis, the creature decided she must know how it could get home. While I wasn't exactly impressed with the creature's manners, I did feel bad for it being stuck in a place so strange to it. I bandaged up its back and had Serene convey the idea that we would try to help it get home. They kept working to figure out exactly where it belonged, while I started leading the way further in. Our group neared what we all felt was the center of the distortion. I realized my second mistake. See, it wasn't a naturally occurring distortion. We began to hear chanting, and Serene said she could feel the presence of multiple minds, about 100 yards ahead of us. The air was tense with the feeling of power, combined with the feeling of multiple spaces all trying to fit into one, as dimensional borders broke down. We all glanced at each other, and stepped forward as quietly as possible. It was probably lucky that the ground was covered in sand. It's a lot quieter to walk on. At 50 yards out, we could hear the chanting clearly. A little closer, and I could peer through the trees to see a group of hooded figures. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who had an interest in other dimensions, and it looked like these people had an actual ritual to get there. They were standing in a clearing, which we all moved as close to as we could without being seen, before beginning to circle around the clearing. It looked like a pretty typical ritual setup, if you could ignore the distortions in reality opening around the figures. There was an altar in the center with a single figure and book, surrounded by a ring of other hooded figures and strange symbols carved into the trees. But around the ring of figures were these openings to what we figured must be other realities. They shifted in weaves like a mirage in the desert, but the environments beyond each one seemed to stay constant. I planned to circle around the clearing and see if I could find one that led to Onolith. I figured I'd be able to recognize it, since I've sent plenty of demons there through my own homemade version of these openings. had to be somewhere around here. I could smell it. Serene and I started to argue whether or not she was going to come with me. Mind-reading related concerns aside, I think part of me knew my getting back to Earth plan wasn't exactly foolproof, and I didn't want her to end up stuck with me if I failed. We were circling around the clearing when I saw it. The opening was right there, not 20 yards away. I was debating how to sneak past the circle of hooded, probably people, when the muscle creature must have found a window to its home dimension. It burst from the trees and just busted right through the ring of figures, flinging two of them aside entirely. In a flash, it was gone, back home safely. Good for it. But not good for us, since now the entire company of hooded figures turned towards us. They were human, after all, so they could only see me. Great. And to top it off, they stopped chanting, and the openings were starting to look a lot more mirage-like and a lot less window-like. I figured no time like the present and charged through the gap the muscle creature made, veering left instead of right this time, straight toward the window to Onolith. Surprisingly, no one tried to stop me. They just stared as I slammed shoulder first into the portal and bounced off the thing like a friggin' trampoline. Are you kidding me? So close I can see the other side. But nope, not going through. I finally did find out why I keep getting stuck on this side. I'll get to that in a bit. So, I sat there on my rear, attempting to push my arm through this portal, which was absolutely not happening. Until a few seconds later, it disappeared completely. I was pretty disheartened at this point, and just stared at nothing until Serene grabbed me and pulled me up by the shoulder. The hooded people had finally decided to do something about me, and possibly Serene too, since her pulling me upward was pretty noticeable. I saw the main guy in the middle holding the book, and got an idea. Why not take the book? It obviously had the instructions in it, considering the way he was trying to protect it. I dropped down to a squatting position and waited. I was finally going to use my hard head for something productive. Once the line of figures got almost within grabbing distance of my head, I barreled forward as hard as I could, head first. I knocked straight into their knees and managed to push through the line as a few of them fell over. I shot up on the other side, ran toward the guy with the book, and did the only thing I seemed to be good at. I hit him in the face. He dropped the book, which started floating away on its own. Serene had it. Good. She was okay too. We started running back into the woods as the hooded figures gave chase. I realized that my wallet with my ID and address in it was in my backpack. If they found it, they'd probably hunt me to the ends of the earth trying to get their book back. Serene caught my drift, and we angled back in that direction. They were close behind us now, and I felt a hand grab my arm. Remembering I had a knife, I sliced at the hand, which let go. My backpack was just up ahead, and I managed to grab it. I swung it in a circle, hitting another guy in the chest and knocking him backward, before sliding the backpack on and running forward again. Now, I'm in pretty decent shape, and so is Serene. But I actually think the only reason we got away is because ankle-length robes aren't the most efficient thing to run in, especially through a forest. We were also lucky that by the time they started chasing us, it was about 4 p.m. And in the winter, night comes early, especially in the woods. We managed to give them the slip in the dark, as I hid under some particularly large hollow tree roots, and Serene stayed quietly close by. Navigating our way out of the forest was a bit difficult, but I did remember to bring a map and compass, since I had thought we might have to search a large area. We made it back to the hotel around 6 p.m. this evening. Now the question is, can I figure out how to work this book? Oh, and I should probably figure out how I can protect myself in Onolith, and how I can successfully get back here with my mom. Oh right, I said earlier I'd explain why I haven't been able to enter Onolith before. Well, that's because I have a physical body. I already knew that demons who come here for Monolith only have a physical form if they purposefully manifest it from energy. I also knew that human souls could be taken to Monolith, but somehow I never connected the dots to figure out that human bodies couldn't. Now, before you freak out, no, I'm not going to have to kill myself or anything like that to get there. Instead, I can perform astral projection, a process in which the soul temporarily leaves the body and can move around separately. I also plan to find someone to look after my body while I'm not in it. Maybe take it to a hospital just in case. As you all know, I've made some hasty decisions in the past, especially recently. This time, I think I need to go slow and make some more realistic plans instead of just running headfirst into things. I'm going to spend some time analyzing this book before I do anything else. I'll keep you all updated as I figure things out, and I'll definitely let you know before I go running off into anything supernatural. Thank you again for all your suggestions and support.